Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills tonight, previewing key matchups, and handing out our pregame superlatives. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cover One Air Raid Hour pregame show presented by Picasso's Pizza. My name is Steve Mathis, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on X at Tilt Money. And Dave, I don't know. In the next hour and a half, we're just going to be debating Tyrod's legacy, correct? That's what we're going to be.
Seems like that's what a lot of people want to talk about. It's a little exhausting for my liking, but that's fine. He's an endeared former player, and I get that. So look, not my area that I like to necessarily go off on social media or anything like that. But yeah, I'll let people have their fun.
So it is the Buffalo Bills against Ty God, Brian Daboll, Isaiah Hodgins, and a plethora of other former Buffalo Bills this evening. The Buffalo Bills 14.5-point favorites on Sunday Night Football. I know a lot of Buffalo, a lot of Western New York is already at the tailgates. Maybe put the Cover One pregame show up on at the tailgate. And for the out-of-towners and other people staying at home, thank you for joining us live here or on replay anytime before this 8:15 p.m. kickoff this evening. I wanted to start off today's show, Dave, with a very serious conversation on the uniform matchup in this football game, because the Buffalo Bills are going in their red color rush jerseys, and the New York Giants, they've got the jersey advantage tonight. They're going with their navy blue helmets with the Giants, the word Giants written across it, their white color rush to go along with it. I cannot help but think what could have been this evening had the Buffalo Bills, whoever was in charge over at One Bills Drive with uniforms, had they gotten their you-know-what together in time, and the Buffalo Bills were debuting their 1990s throwback red helmet uniforms tonight, it would have been one of the all-time uniform games and maybe made the Sunday Night Football matchup a little bit more watchable.
I'll just go on record to say the red are my least favorite uniforms the Bills wear. I'm colorblind, so there's a part of me that it doesn't sit well in my eyes. It kind of hurts my eyes a bit. That Bills Jets game where the Bills wore red and the Jets wore green was probably the worst watching experience I ever had in watching a color rush game. But I am not a fan of the red uniforms. The all white is such a clean look that the Giants are going to be rolling out there tonight. Yep. So, if you're a Giants fan and you're looking for any kind of advantages, maybe you start with the uniform, because otherwise there's not really much that the Giants can point to as advantages in this game.
I don't like the red on red. I don't mind the red per se. I just don't like the red on red. If they were allowed, if the NFL for some reason won't let them do this, but if they were allowed to wear the white pants with the red top and the white helmet, it would be a perfectly acceptable third jersey. But the red on red, I know there are people that love it. I personally am not a big fan of it. So let's get into some serious football talk here, and let's start with the weather. The weather tonight, mid-40s, possible light rain, 5 to 10 mile per hour winds. Honestly, this is ideal October weather in Buffalo. It really should not be a factor at all in this game tonight.
Yeah, and I think you hit it there, right? 5 to 10 mile an hour wind. And that's the thing that you kind of watch out for in these fall games. And of course, going into the winter, in Orchard Park is the wind. And in this case, even if it's a light rain, I don't expect that really to have any impact on this game. The wind is going to be minimal. Really shouldn't be an impact either. Temperatures are, 40 degrees, pretty nice football weather, honestly, for this time of year. So really, weather should be a non-factor in this game, unless maybe the rain picks up a bit. But it doesn't seem like it will as of now based on the forecast.
Let's take a look at the injuries now, because a couple people in the comment section, like Spin0481 says, did Dalton Kincaid pass the concussion protocol? We will not know the answer to that question probably until the Buffalo Bills inactive list comes out. Right now, the Buffalo Bills are dealing with 3 injuries and 3 players who are questionable for this football game. Dane Jackson with his foot is questionable. I don't think he plays, especially with that Jamarcus Ingram call-up from the practice squad. Dawson Knox with what looks like a sprained wrist. He was at the Buffalo Sabres game in like a brace, with a brace on that wrist on Tuesday night. He is questionable, but as Adam Schefter reported today, he is expected to play. And then Dalton Kincaid, who is still technically in concussion protocol, is questionable to play. However, Kyle over at Banged Up Bills, he did a little bit of digging. He did a little bit of research. Most players who do not get removed from the protocol, who are out for the game with concussions, they're usually declared out and ruled out for the game previous to the game before the inactive list comes out. So if you're looking for a little bit of a glimmer of hope that Dalton Kincaid is going to play today, and I know Eric feels pretty confident in our talks with him that Dalton Kincaid, because of what Kyle was saying, is going to play in this game. They have yet to announce anything. So my guess, my best prediction too, along with what Eric and Kyle believe, is that Dalton Kincaid will play in this game.
Yeah, and it sounds like they have a good chance for both tight ends to be available. Now, the effectiveness of Dawson Knox with that sprained wrist, we will see. Obviously, if Kincaid is cleared to play, I mean, there really should be no limitation on his physical ability, right? And his ability to kind of run his routes, catch the football, etc. So if both guys play, you would expect that, again, that from a on-field standpoint, Kincaid would be kind of the go-to guy tonight if the Bills were going to kind of mix in the tight end a bit more tonight. But it sounds like that there's a chance both guys could play. And like you said, we probably find out later, closer to game time.
Jessica Tennis comes in and says, in my opinion, Knox will not be out catching balls, just blocking with a heavy brace. Even blocking might be really difficult. It'll be really interesting to see whether it's one way or the other with that sprained wrist that he is dealing with. It's probably going to be heavily taped like it was in practice this week. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Bills go about utilizing Dawson Knox. Does this make him one-dimensional one way or the other? Does it make him strictly a pass catcher because it's easier maybe to catch a football with that wrist than just to block? Or does it make him, as Jessica points out, maybe strictly a blocker? So that'll be something interesting to keep an eye on if this injury makes him one-dimensional one way or the other. And then obviously there's Dalton Kincaid. Eric did a really good job this week embarrassing me because I came out on this show on Monday, said, listen, we're not doing a good enough job getting the ball to Dalton Kincaid, scheming things up for him. Eric went and he put in the work in the film room this week, and he showed a number of instances where Dalton Kincaid was open. Josh Allen just chose to go other places with the football. So it'll be really interesting to see if everything comes together this week, and the emphasis is on Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid being the first read, Dalton Kincaid being where Josh Allen looks. It appears right now to be maybe just a trust thing where Josh is trusting the first read more than Dalton Kincaid. He's trusting guys who have been here longer over Dalton Kincaid. Eric did a really good job on social media piecing together all the different plays where Kincaid was open. Josh Allen just made the decision to throw the ball elsewhere. And a lot of times, it's not even like Josh Allen made a bad choice. They were big plays to other players, but Dalton Kincaid was open as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out with the tight ends. Looking at the projected inactives this week, it's probably going to be Jermaine Ifedi again. It's probably going to be Alec Anderson again. That's not going to change. Dane Jackson will probably be out. Jamarcus Ingram will probably be activated. DeMar Hamlin will probably sit again. And then there are 2 other inactives that the Buffalo Bills have to utilize if Kincaid plays. And it's going to be really interesting because one of them will probably be the 6th edge rusher, and the other one will probably be the 6th linebacker. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, you're looking at Shaq Lawson versus Kingsley Jonathan, and you are looking at AJ Klein versus Balon Spector. Let's start with Shaq Lawson versus Kingsley Jonathan. Who would you rather have in the lineup tonight? And who do you think will be in the lineup?
Oh man, I mean, it's a great question. I think that if Saquon's in the lineup, you might want to say you'd want Shaq Lawson in, right? I think for the run D, Saquon sounds like he's going to be a game time decision by everything kind of coming across the tickers this morning. We know Tyrod has the ability to kind of get out of the pocket, etc. If Saquon is not playing, I think you lean towards Kingsley Jonathan as the guy that you'd prefer, because you'd want to kind of continue that trend of that pass rush that's been so effective against the Giants by all teams really this year, the most sacked team in the league, only behind Sam Howell and the Commanders. So that's a tough one. I think my gut would want Kingsley Jonathan for tonight's game, just because I feel like he could create potentially more negative plays in a game script where like a few negative plays that go against the Giants could be really just backbreaking for them early on in the contest. So for me, like, I guess I would slightly prefer Kingsley Jonathan in that scenario.
Yeah,
Plus,
as
he's
a
been
fan,
playing well too. So I mean, it's not like he hasn't been. So.
they both been playing well, and as a fan, I lean with you. It's sort of like that Mark Wahlberg quote from the other guys, right? Kingsley Jonathan, in his limited amount of snaps, he's been a peacock. You got to let him fly, right? But at the end of the day, with Von Miller, Gregory Rousseau, Leonard Floyd, and AJ Epinesa in front of you, how much of an opportunity to fly are you going to get? So you can bring special teams into this. Who's a better special teamer, Kingsley Jonathan, Shaq Lawson, late in the game? Or if there are injuries, who are you going to need more? I think if the Buffalo Bills are looking for a pass rusher, they're going to go with Kingsley Jonathan. And if they're looking for a run stuffer, they're going to go with Shaq Lawson. So it'll be really interesting to see. As a fan, I want Kingsley Jonathan. As a prognosticator, I'm probably going to lean towards Shaq Lawson. That brings up the second sort of debate here of who will be active or inactive. Baylon Spector signed to the active roster yesterday. He practiced in full all week coming back from his injury. AJ Klein signed to the active roster this week. So the Bills have finally, it's like Thanos with the Infinity Stones. The Bills finally have their sixth linebackers. Not that Thanos has 6 fingers, but they finally have their 6 linebackers that, Sean McDermott wanted so bad. They finally have their 6 linebackers. Who goes in this game? Is it going to be AJ Klein, the veteran, or is it going to be Baylon Spector, the youth movement here?
I mean, you're already going to have probably that youth movement with Dorian Williams getting a lot of playing. Man, that's tough. I think as the prognosticator, I'll go with AJ Klein, but I think that I only say that because not that Baylon Spector can't play. He obviously has been practicing, and like he's not going to have any limitations necessarily, but also coming back, right? Like, throwing him into the mix that soon. Maybe the Bills want to give him a chance to ease in, play some special teams a bit, and kind of ease him in a bit that way. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think my heart would want Spector, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's AJ Klein.
This is a tough one, right? Because with AJ Klein, you have a sort of a security blanket. If Tyrod Dodson or Dorian Williams fall on their face in this game, or both fall on their face in this game. But at the end of the day, the way I look at it, if Tyrod Dodson gets hurt, it's probably Dorian Williams. Or if Dorian Williams starts and he gets hurt, it's probably Tyrod Dodson. Maybe this week it will be AJ Klein, but I think probably tonight and going forward, I think it'll probably be Baylon Spector because, as Jessica Tennis points out in the comment section, AJ Klein isn't much of a special teams player anymore. And when you're the 5th, 6th linebacker on the depth chart, you got to be able to play special teams.
Yep.
So I'm actually going to go with Baylon Spector here because of special teams. But if it's for 1 week only, I wouldn't be surprised if it's AJ Klein because they want that security blanket there, transitioning some new linebackers into that Matt Milano role. Looking over at the Giants injuries now, and I mean, we could spend a whole show on the Giants injuries. Daniel Jones out, starting left tackle Andrew Thomas, who's the linchpin of that offensive line, out. Matthew Pert, backup tackle, who was starting, out. John Michael Schmitz, their pivot, their center, a guy we adored in the pre-draft process, out. Ojulari, one of their pass rushers, placed on IR. He is out. Then you have a whole plethora of guys who are questionable. And based on the moves that the Giants made, IRing Ojulari and the guys that they called up, just looking at the numbers, I think most of these questionable guys will play. Yeah. I think the Gary Brightwell might be iffy if they decide to keep 3 or 4 running backs. Davidson might be iffy because they have another extra defensive lineman that they can play in Riley. But other than that, I fully expect Barkley to go. I fully expect Darren Waller to go, and reports are indicating that both will go. I think Evan Neal will go. I think Shane Lemieux will be there in a reserve capacity. I think and I think Micah McFadden is going to play tonight. So I think based on the moves that the Giants made, because they were desperate, they were up against it. If these guys were not going to play, they would have had to IR some dudes to have enough bodies to fill the 48-man roster. Only one healthy player is going to be inactive for this game, and it's probably going to be the safety, Gerald Owens. So they really were up against it. So I expect most of these questionable guys to play. What are your thoughts on this Giants injury report and getting guys like Saquon Barkley back, but losing pretty much every other player on their team with a pulse?
Yeah, they're getting, if they get Saquon Barkley back, you wonder like how close to 100% he is. I don't think he's going to be 100%, but still a 80% Saquon Barkley or whatever he might be is a nice boost for that Giants team.
Still better than Matt Breida.
Still better than Matt Breida. And look, I think the main story is going to be those injuries across the offensive line, right? With John Michael Schmitz out and Andrew Thomas out. Thomas being, like you said, kind of the guy that sets the tone for that entire line left to right. The Giants have really struggled in pass protection this year. We've documented it, you know, in the quick preview we did last week. Daniel Jones has been sacked 28 times. Obviously, he's not playing tonight already this year. The Giants have had major protection issues all season. And so you kind of saw it a little bit in the beginning of the game this morning where like Titans couldn't really protect Tannehill, which means they couldn't really get Derrick Henry rolling. Obviously, he got rolling later, but like, what are the Giants going to do, right? Because I don't know that their run blocking is going to hold up either with these guys out as it is. Now, that's going to be probably their only chance. But these injuries across the offensive line, to me, are the biggest storyline as far as like a huge advantage kind of leaning in the Bills' favor. Albeit, you know, the Bills have injuries of their own, but it's a huge advantage in the Bills' favor. And like this Giants team has not been able to protect all year. So Andrew Thomas not playing, John Michael Schmitz not playing. I think to me, those are the two key ones in my opinion.
All right. We have a huge Tajay Spears run. This kid is blowing up behind Derrick Henry for the Titans, making things a little bit interesting in London. Before we get into the key matchups today, a quick word from the guys at the Cover One Buffalo podcast about the best ways to support us here at Cover One.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
All right. Let's talk about it now. Let's get into the key matchups. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills offense versus the New York Giants defense. And I'll tell you what, I did not put too much thought into this football game over the course of the week, right? Like I'm sleeping on the Giants, but of course the Buffalo Bills are not sleeping on the New York Giants. They have been fully preparing over the course of this week. And as I started digging this weekend into this game, I came across a tweet from Eric Turner that he actually sent out this morning. And this is probably the one thing, the one statistic that has me a little bit anxious for this football game. And this is the statistic that Eric, the combination of statistics that Eric threw out this morning on social media, on Twitter. He said the Giants have the second highest blitz rate in the National Football League at 42%. The Jaguars blitzed Josh Allen 46.5% of the time last week. Allen, when blitzed last week, was 9 of 18 for 67 yards and 3.7 yards per attempt. Josh Allen is usually good against the blitz. Last week, he was not. Why? Because the Jaguars had a thorough understanding of the Buffalo Bills' protections, and they attacked the Buffalo Bills' protections. And then Eric closed out with, you think Brian Daboll understands the Buffalo Bills' protections? This could be the biggest chance that the New York Giants have at victory in this football game, is being able to pressure Josh Allen, being able to take the underneath stuff away, and just stagnating this offense like the Jacksonville Jaguars did last week, maybe forcing a couple of timely turnovers and giving the Giants short field.
Yeah, and I mean the Giants are going to have to go all out in this game, right? I mean they're going
Mhm.
to have to be creative. They're going to have to blitz. They're going to have to do anything and everything they can to kind of create negative plays for the Bills, right? And as a team coming in as such huge
Mhm.
underdogs, there are going to be some chances that the Giants take defensively. So what this means for the Bills, right? Like there could be one of two ways this could go, right? Josh Allen can take advantage of that and kind of make sure that if the Giants are taking risks on defense, that he makes
Mhm.
them pay for it. Or this could work in the Giants' favor where they take risks on defense and the Bills' offense maybe sputters again, like they did last week against the Jags. I mean, the
Mhm.
Jags tape should be what the Giants are watching, and it's going to be kind of trending to what the Giants would likely do anyway. So, um, to me, like that is you're right. Like that is such a crucial part of this game plan for the Giants. And like it I don't know how
Mhm.
much of a factor like Brian Daboll knowing the schemes are. I'm sure it certainly helps the
Yeah.
Giants, but the Bills need to counter that
Yeah.
themselves, right? And kind of do some creative things on their own side. So
And
it's a bit of a chess match for sure.
yeah, and a lot of people coming in, Red, White, and Bill says the protections are different. Roy Collins says Dable took Johnson with him, no correlation. I think Cromer has affected especially the run game a lot, and I think Ken Dorsey has installed a lot of his own stuff in terms of running the football. But I do think in terms of pass protections and this passing offense, I think a lot of the Brian Dable stuff has stayed intact. So he's not going to know it exactly, right? But I think he'll have a pretty good indicator of what the Buffalo Bills protections are, comparatively speaking to other people around the National Football League. Sophia God's friend comes in and says, smash that like for the win. Go Bills. Always appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your contribution there. And then the second thing is like, I feel like if the Giants have a chance at winning this football game, we're going to be having some like Josh Boyer PTSD from when Josh Boyer was with the New England, or excuse me, not the New England Patriots, the Miami Dolphins, right? And they just
Mm,
threw the kitchen sink at Josh Allen, and that's how they tried
right.
to win a football game last year. Now, it was only effective because it was 130 degrees on the Bills sidelines and the entire team got hurt. That was really the only reason why that game plan was so effective against Josh Allen. But that's probably something that we're going to see from the New York Giants tonight, at least a little bit, because their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, uber aggressive, and he likes to utilize
Mhm.
cover zero. Another statistic that Eric put it out on social media this morning made it a little bit easier for me not having to do my own research. The cover zero blitz rate of the New York Giants this year: on first down, 5%, on second down, 10%, on third down, you get up to 17%. And then on fourth down, one in every four fourth downs, they come with a cover zero blitz, 25%. Eric noted to expect it on third and short and to expect it in the load red zones. And the Bills have sort of been hot and cold over the past half a decade under Josh Allen, with whichever offensive coordinator they had, Daboll or Ken Dorsey, when it comes to being able to handle that cover zero blitz.
Yeah, and the usage is interesting because personnel wise, right? Like the Giants don't necessarily have like great athletes like to be able to utilize that type of
Mm-hmm.
coverage. However, statistically and playing the numbers, like that's again going to be one of their edges in this game. So to me, like this becomes a very interesting combination of not just scheme, but also like the personnel that the Giants are going to be using when they run these schemes. It's like not going to be to the caliber that it was with Josh Boyer in that Miami game, albeit the conditions were different. So,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end of the day, too, the Bills really need to find an answer to this anyway. So I hope that this is something that's maybe been a focus of the Bills this week in the meetings and in the game planning. Like the Bills can't ignore this, right? This is something that teams
Mm-hmm.
are going to be using. Like other teams are likely going to be using them as well, even beyond this Giants game. So I hope they come up with some creative ways to kind of counter that. But as you said,
Mm-hmm.
like the Bills have been a little bit hot and cold going against this type of defense in the past. So another thing that just kind of like gets me a little like not
Mm-hmm.
worried is the wrong word, but just like it's
Yeah.
there. It's there. It's kind of just like sitting right there on my shoulder. It's annoying.
Oh, sorry. Jessica Tennis comes in and says the biggest free you McDermott could do is run the ball over and over again. And I mean, if you were going to say one thing about Brian Daboll's tenure as the offensive coordinator, I think a lot of people were upset with his inability to find sort of and strike a balance with the run game and the pass game. The running game was too dependent on Josh Allen. Yes, the running game found success here and there, but it was so hot and cold. It did get right at the hot at the right time a couple of seasons ago when we made that one playoff run, but that was the biggest sort of black eye in Brian Daboll's tenure here, was an inability to find that balance in the offense. So if the Buffalo Bills came out tonight and just ran the ball down the Giants' throats, that would be a big frig you from Sean McDermott and Ken Dorsey to Brian Daboll. Speaking of running the football, I think the offensive line needs a bounce back week, right? There are a number of things that this offensive line needs to go out and needs to accomplish this week. Number one, Cook, Murray, Harris, you got to get that running game groove back. I don't need, James Cook to pop off for 150 yards and 3 tutties, but we have to establish and have a competent running game. Last week, there was not a competent running game. It was, quite frankly, an incompetent running game. The Buffalo Bills were barely able to run the ball at all. So they need to go out there and they need to show some competency in the run game. The interior offensive line, right? They've been underperforming, but Dexter Lawrence, Williams, these are good players on the interior of this Giants D line. Their interior offensive line of the Buffalo Bills needs to sort of make sure they're setting the line of scrimmage this week. Okereke, McFadden, these are 2 linebackers that can get sideline to sideline. And then in terms of pass protection, you got to account for a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau the way that they were accounting for guys like Max Crosby in weeks past. And Ward is a sleeper pass rusher. He always seems to have a big game whenever I'm watching. So the offensive line is going to have their hands full because the Giants do. If the Giants have any talent on this football team, it's in the front 7.
Yeah, it's in the front 7. And Thibodeau, I mean, his raw statistics, like as far as pressures per pressure rate per pressure, it's like incredibly high right now. He doesn't have a ton of volume in that regard, but he's been able to get to the quarterback this year and he's been able to apply pressure this year. So I would love to give Kayvon Thibodeau the Max Crosby treatment. I do think the Giants defensive front is solid, but I think that if you're gonna parallel this to the Raiders game, Raiders had a couple, other okay guys in the interior as well. Like number 1 was Max Crosby. I mean, enemy number 1 in this game has to be Kayvon Thibodeau. I think this could be an interesting kind of callback to what Jessica was saying earlier about Dawson Knox. And to me, I wonder about that because I feel personally, and I don't really have a medical reason to say that, I would imagine that blocking would be harder to do with a sprained wrist than running routes and maybe catching the ball. And I could be wrong, but that's going to be interesting to me, right? Because how else are they going to help maybe Spencer Brown out a little bit with Thibodeau if Knox is not 100% with that wrist? It'll be interesting to see how the Bills kind of scheme up ways to give Spencer Brown help, especially because the Bills offensive line is probably coming off, at least in the run games standpoint, their worst game of the year against Jacksonville, I think it's fair to say. So look, the Giants can be run on, right? I mean, you look at their games this year, DVOA wise, they're down towards the bottom in rush D. They've given up 122, 151, 141, 121, and last week 222 on the ground to the Dolphins. So opportunities will be there for the Bills to run the ball. So kind of like what I was saying back in the early couple games, maybe the Bills go a little contrarian and do run it a bit more to try to get that going, try to slow down maybe a little bit of the strength of that Giants defensive line and in one of their budding stars in Thibodeau. So I wouldn't hate that approach. And I wouldn't also hate the approach of maybe running a little bit more to the wide zones, right? I wouldn't mind James Cook getting out on the, off tackle a bit as well. Roy says use an extra O lineman. That could be.
It's a David Edwards game, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So a couple other notes on this offense. I mean, obviously Brian Daboll knows how good Stefon Diggs is. However, I don't think the Giants really have a guy who can go mano-a-mano with Stefon Diggs. So it's going to be really interesting. You're probably going to see a lot of bodies thrown at Stefon Diggs in an attempt to stop him, to slow him down. They're going to try and bracket him early on in this football game. So I think it's going to be imperative for some receivers outside of Stefon Diggs, at least early on in the football game, to get the pressure off of Diggs, to step up, make some big plays, make some big catches. Dave, where do you think it's going to come from outside of Stefon Diggs this week. Who is Stefon Diggs going to open up the door for with all the attention that's going to be paid on him?
Well, it certainly seems like there's going to be opportunities for Gabe Davis in this game. And you go
Big
back
game
and you
Gabe,
look
baby.
at, you go back and you look at on that thread that Eric put out around how some of the teams have attacked the Giants defensively and going heavy personnel, but then spreading them out off of that personnel, right? And sort of like keeping that Giants sort of base defense, their heavier defensive linemen, forcing some of their heavier guys to play out in coverage, especially with Knox and Kincaid like potentially banged up. Like I could see this being maybe like a situation where the Bills go a little bit heavier. Maybe they don't use those guys in routes as much as they would have normally. And I think Gabe Davis is going to have opportunities, not just over the middle of the field, but I think on the sidelines as well. The 49ers did a really good job with that. The Cardinals did a really good job with that against the Giants back in that week 2 game. I think it was, with the likes of Rondale Moore and Hollywood Brown. So I think there are going to be opportunities for Gabe Davis in this game. And to me, like if he's going to be big game Gabe and under the spotlight in these primetime games, he tends to show up, right? I mean, he's had big moments in primetime games, and I would expect that this could be another opportunity for Gabe to make a stamp and really help Stefon Diggs out. Like you said, I think which secondary guy in that group is the guy to step up, the healthiest guy, the bona fide number 2 wide receiver on the team. To me, it's got to be Gabe Davis.
Yeah, 100%. Gabriel Davis, I think, is going to have a big game, and he needs to have a big game. The more you can feed Gabriel Davis early on in this football game, the less pressure it's going to take on Stefon Diggs so he can pop off in the second half and put this football game away. Jay Davis comes in and says Trent Sherfield needs to play more. Roy Collins mentions Trent Sherfield. Buffalo Dave comes in and says, or Deontay Hardy. This could be a situation, right, where we see more 11 personnel. I know you just talked about like the heavy package and the success other teams have had going heavy against the New York Giants, but maybe the Buffalo Bills have to pivot because of these injuries at tight ends. And maybe they have to limit the amount of, 12 personnel that they utilize in this football game. And maybe that opens up the door if you're not bringing a David Edwards in. Maybe that opens up the door for more 11 personnel than the Buffalo Bills have been running. And maybe that could possibly open up the door for a Trent Sherfield or a Deontay Hardy or a Khalil Shakir. Maybe someone steps up early in the game. They ride the hot hand. One of them gets to play the entirety of the game. And maybe one of those guys really separates themselves in that slot wide receiver position. All right. Now, final thoughts on the offense before we move to the Buffalo Bills defense.
Look, I think if the Bills don't turn the ball over in this game and they're just steady, they can get things going a bit earlier than they did against Jacksonville. Like this really should be a game where they have plenty of success, right? I don't see this being a huge impediment to the Bills. Like I know the Giants have some matchups that maybe could present some issues, but man, this Bills offense really needs to bounce back after that game in London, and I think they should.
To me, the goal should be a touchdown a quarter. That'll get you to 28 points, and that should surely be enough to win this football game. If whether you want to play ball control or you want to hurry things up, whatever it is, just go try to get one. That should be their goal. Just one touchdown every quarter that gets you 28 points by the end of the game. And then I think obviously as the game plays out, there'll be situations where your defense gets a turnover, your defense forces a punt, and you get really good field position. Like there'll be situations in the game that will allow you to score more points than that per quarter. But the baseline goal, I think, should be for the Buffalo Bills to score a touchdown a quarter in this football game to at least put 28 points up on the board against this New York Giants defense. All right. On to now the Buffalo Bills defense against the New York Giants offense. I was mentioning to you pregame. I usually spend 2-3 hours over the course of the week just completely immersed in SIS data, in PFF data, not their grades because their grades suck, but their data. I look at DVOA. Like I put 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes worth of preparation into this show, doing research on the opponents that the Buffalo Bills will be playing. I couldn't bring myself to even look at the data for the New York Giants offense this week. And I don't mean that to sound disrespectful. I don't mean to sound like I'm lazy and I didn't try to come prepared to this, but I just feel like a team with a backup quarterback that's played like a quarter of a football game this year and a completely decimated offensive line, you're really they're limited, and you're not going to find any real trends, in my opinion, about the New York Giants offense. It's just going to be all about the Buffalo Bills defense going out there this week and doing their freaking job. But what are your initial thoughts on this New York Giants offense, which is just completely decimated?
Dead last in DVOA offense, dead last in raw statistics, yards per game, the Giants offense, that is. Second to last in points per game, 12.4 points per game. The only team worse than them is the New England Patriots in that regard, which is hilarious. Like you said, banged up on the offensive line, backup quarterback. Like, I put it on Twitter earlier in the week. I was like, if there was ever an opportunity or something put in front of you, if you're the Bills after that London game, to get yourselves back on the right track. And the defense played admirably last week in London, so don't get me wrong on that. But like, to really get yourselves back on track and have a statement here tonight, it's going to be this Bills defense absolutely needs to shut down this Giants offense. Trends or not, I mean, I know Tyrod being in kind of adds a different sort of element, but Daniel Jones is a runner of the football. He's a good running quarterback, so
sneaky
that
athletic.
shouldn't really that really shouldn't change things much for the Bills as far as their approach and skill position talent. Darren Waller's probably going to play, but he's not going to be 100%. The Giants have kind of struggled to get him involved as well, as much as we like to complain about maybe Kincaid not getting involved. How about their multi-million-dollar tight end, Darren Waller, that they traded for? The Giants have struggled to get him involved. He's not going to be 100%. And Saquon, if he does play, which it sounds like he will, he's not going to be 100%. So the Giants are really – the only thing you can say about the Giants is they're desperate, and they're probably going to throw everything they can at the Bills. Like, they're going to empty the playbook most likely, and Brian Daboll is probably going to
trick plays, things like that,
trick plays, like anything, right? So, like, okay, maybe the Bills get hit for a trick play or something. Like, don't let that ruin your night, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, don't let that ruin your night. Don't let that snowball, and you'll be fine.
And we're going to get into the game plan too. The game plan for the Buffalo Bills is going to be to rush 4 and drop 7. So the Buffalo Bills will probably have plenty of padding back there to sort of withstand any sort of trick plays that the New York Giants throw at them. Two other statistics that I threw out to you pregame too, that I heard while watching the Giants broadcast last week. The New York Giants still haven't scored a first half touchdown. They haven't scored a touchdown on offense. Their only touchdown in the first half this year was a pick 6 last week off of Tua that went up for 102 yards. That is their only touchdown in the first half of a football game this season. And we are in week 6. Like, that is not good. They have held a lead in their football games this season for a grand total of 19 seconds. 19. The only time they have led in a football game this year was with 19 seconds left when they came from behind down 20 plus points to the Arizona Cardinals in week 2. If the Buffalo Bills do not win this game by 3 scores, something went incredibly wrong. This is the worst football team in the NFL.
I was literally just going to say that. Panthers may not have won a game yet, but for my money, the Giants are the worst team in the NFL.
And it's not 100% their fault, because they'd probably be serviceable if they could stay healthy, but they're not. And with these injuries, they are the worst football team in the National Football League. And it's not close.
Yeah, you start thinking about who the worst teams in the league are. Obviously, the Panthers haven't won a game. They're going with their rookie QB. Bryce Young also missed a game or two. They've looked okay. They have a decent defense. Like, they're in the trajectory that we expected for the Panthers. The Giants are coming off a season where they were a playoff team. And granted, it was likely smoke and mirrors last year, right? They had the second easiest strength of schedule in the entire league last year based on last year's records during that season. They had a healthy Saquon Barkley really carrying the load for them. They had Daniel Jones limiting his mistakes last year in a defense that was a little bit more opportunistic, but they have crashed and burned so far this year. They are, to me, the worst team in the NFL. And like you said, there is no reason. Like, maybe, who knows? Maybe we just put the jinx on the Bills by saying that. But like, my goodness, like, if the Bills don't really like look emphatically dominant in this game, I think people are gonna get angry.
Yeah, Brendan P and RJ Melville came in and said, "Oh, so they're gonna score on one of their first drives tonight."
Probably.
The Buffalo Bills are gonna give up a touchdown in the first drive of tradition against Buffalo.
Yeah, a trick play.
The overreaction will be real on social media. But we should probably all just settle down and let the game progress, even if that does happen. But Yeah, I mean, looking at their X factors on offense, like what they have going for them on offense, Saquon Barkley returns. His last return from a high ankle sprain, because he sprained that ankle a ton. He went off for 72 yards and a touchdown. Every reporter this week in the New York Giants media is like, guys, like his ankle is taped up to the max and he does not look very fluid in practice. I can't believe he's playing. The Giants might just be making a desperation push at this point, putting Saquon Barkley out in the football field. It'll be interesting to see how he goes and performs tonight. You get shot up before the game. You have the adrenaline. He'll probably come out and perform pretty admirably, but I'm honestly shocked they're putting him out there.
I mean, Saquon, I feel like he's had some tough luck, right, injury wise in his career. I've always been a big Saquon fan. Obviously, last year he had that really nice bounce back season from after a couple years of being injured, and he's gonna gut it out, right? Like he's a gamer. Like even if he's out there as a somewhat pseudo decoy, right, to maybe help Giants like slow down the Bills' pass rush a little bit with some play, whatever, right? Like him just being out there is gonna be like a uplift for the Giants emotionally. There'll be a lot of chatter about him playing, and like that will be a little bit of a boost to the Giants offense, but the effectiveness is what you wonder about. Now, again, I think if you're a Bills fan, you would probably still rather not see Saquon Barkley in this game because like you don't want the Giants to have any glimmer of hope, but you wonder about how effective he will be with that ankle injury.
For the Bills on defense, to me, it's a simple game plan. I mean, from left to right, this is probably what their offensive line is going to look like. It's Joshua Azidu at left tackle. He's a guard. He is a guard, and he's playing left tackle for the New York Giants right now. You're going to have the veteran Mark Lewinsky at left guard. He was at one point benched, but he is now back into the lineup because they need his veteran presence. You're going to have Ben Bredesen at center, filling in for John Michael Schmitz. He's typically one of their guards. You're going to have McKeithen at right guard. He has been benched multiple times now and was maybe injured last week, I think. And Jalen Mayfield saw the field, and then Jalen Mayfield got absolutely worked as the right guard. And then at right tackle, you're going to have an injured Evan Neal, who's had his struggles this year, and we've seen his run-in with the New York Giants media and the New York Giants fans. Off the bench, because it's been patchwork and it's been guys in, guys out, you're probably going to have Shane Lemieux back this week, but my guess is he'll be in a reserve role, break glass in case of emergency. He's questionable, and he has been playing the last couple of weeks. You have Jalen Mayfield, who, like I said, came in and got his shit wrecked last week, did not play very well for them. And then maybe their saving grace is they got the veteran Justin Pugh back, 32, 33 years old, maybe even older than that. I didn't Google it, but he is an aging veteran, had some great years in New York, was solid in Arizona, has been bit by the injury bug in his 30s. Maybe he can come in and give them some semblance of normalcy. Like when they announce the starting lineups, if Justin Pugh is in it, I wouldn't be shocked. That is where the New York Giants currently sit in their situation along the offensive line.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, we know that Von Miller was going to need some time to ramp up, right? And he may not even. This may be a perfect situation for Von Miller tonight as well, to like not necessarily have to play like a full allotment of snaps either, right? So the Bills still looking pretty good. And I think we didn't talk about it during the injury section, but like Groot having no injury designation tonight crazy. And being out there was a big surprise to me, right? I wasn't even sure if he was going to play again this week, and then ended up not being on the final injury report with that foot injury. So again, like maybe that is a good thing for both him and Von Miller, and they can both rotate, especially with guys like Epinesa coming on of late and playing well, Leonard Floyd being really, really good so far this year. And, we'll see what happens between Lawson and Kingsley Jonathan, but like a good situation for the Bills tonight if you're this defensive line in a mismatch to get your guys like a little bit ramped up, and even though they might not be 100%.
And who knows, maybe with Von Miller still ramping up and Groot dealing with an injury, maybe the Buffalo Bills just carry 6 defensive ends in this game. Like, I mean, that could also be a possibility. I doubt it, but like, we want to have Lawson and Jonathan in there because if we get up early, we can just sit Groot and Miller. They don't need to play. Or worst case scenario, Von Miller's not feeling it. Groot, gets dinged up again, all of a sudden we're down to three defensive ends. That's not going to work. Let's make sure we have 6 guys so we have our full plethora, our full rotation, and we have guys to play into the fourth quarter. So maybe the Buffalo Bills do play 6 defensive linemen in this, or 6 defensive ends in this football game. Wouldn't be a total shock, but I sort of started by saying the Buffalo Bills have a simple game plan this week and then just went on a roast of their offensive line previewing it. So the simple game plan is this: apply pressure to Tyrod Taylor, right? The Buffalo Bills should be pushing double-digit sacks in this game. They should be getting pressure with 4, dropping 7. And in doing so, even if you're not getting to the quarterback and getting a sack, you're applying so much pressure that a backup quarterback, a guy who's not completely comfortable, a guy who doesn't exactly have a lot of weapons in the passing game, force some turnovers, right? Sacks, negative plays, turnovers. Essentially, you're just trying to get all of those havoc stats if you're the Buffalo Bills defense in this football game.
Yeah, that's the key, right? I mean, create super low percentage down and distance for the Giants, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that this is a team has proven they cannot overcome that based on the statistics and the trends this year. You put the Giants in anything 3rd and 10 or longer, like we know the Bills love to give up those 3rd and longs. We've seen it happen, but you might give up a cheap one here and there, right? Maybe Tyrod scrambles or whatever, or improvises, whatever. But like, if you're the Bills and you're constantly applying pressure and you're putting the Giants in like 2nd and longs, 3rd and longs after sacks, like that's going to be a huge recipe for success, and like really should be insurmountable for the Giants to overcome things like that. If that's the case all night, 15 sacks, let's go, says Spin. Okay.
I think that would be an NFL record. But looking at the defense, there are some positions that need to be filled this week. Dane Jackson is unlikely to play. Daquan Jones is out of the lineup, and you have obviously Matt Milano out of the lineup now on injury reserve. So the Buffalo Bills have some holes to fill on this defense. When it comes to Dane Jackson, is it going to be week 2 of Kyer Elam, or do you think Jamarcus Ingram, practice squad call-up Jamarcus Ingram, could jump him on the depth chart? What are your thoughts? What are your prognostications here?
I think Kyer starts the game, but I don't know. Like, I think he might have a short leash. That would be my guess. Kind of like how the Patriots are describing Mac Jones having a short leash. Kyer Elam might have a short leash. I do think he'll start. But I think the Bills maybe would be willing to in this game against, let's be real, like matchups that shouldn't necessarily scare you if you're the Bills defense from like a skill position standpoint on the Giants offense. Like, maybe Ingram does get some playing time in this game. Maybe they do a rotation, right? Maybe they give him chances. But I do think Elam will start. Give him a chance to rebound after that game last week and sort of the travel and going up against Calvin Ridley. Like, not an easy matchup for him either. But like, it's tough for him, right? Because the fans want immediate results. He hasn't had a chance to play until last week, and it was not great results, right? So like, he's under the gun, and I'm thinking probably feeling the pressure. So I do think he starts though.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to make excuses for the kid. He was a 1st-round draft pick, but he did sit and didn't play for 4 weeks and then had to go and play in London. You obviously had like the jet lag factor and the fact that the turf was not great there either. Like, there were a number of things that went against Kyer Elam. I'm not excusing any of it, but I'm just pointing out that there were a number of things going against Kyer Elam in his first start of the season. So I think the Buffalo Bills will give him another start. I think you're right. He probably will have a somewhat short of a leash, but I think you could, right? Like, I don't think it's crazy to expect a better game from Kyer Elam this week, given the opponent, given the fact that the game is at home, and given the fact that maybe he's a little bit more acclimated. So I think you're going to see a get-right game from Kyer Elam, but I do think once Dane Jackson is back and healthy, Kyer Elam is going to slide back into that CB3 role. But I was mad last week, obviously, as a fan. A lot of people were mad at the performance of Kyer Elam, but I think at least in the short term, it'll be interesting to see the Buffalo Bills make a move at cornerback. But in the short term, you could do a lot worse at CB3 probably than a guy like Kyer Elam. So it'll be interesting to see if he has that get right game this week. If he doesn't, I mean, then that's a whole other conversation that we're going to have tomorrow.
Right. And this is the game to do it, right? Like, this is the game to build some momentum. I'm not expecting him to come out and necessarily be all pro. I'm not expecting him to put the clamps on everybody he goes against tonight. Like, he might give up some catches. Okay. But like, I think reasonably expect a better performance tonight than we did last week.
Looking around at some other possible decisions that Sean McDermott has to make this week. Tyrell Dodson versus Dorian Williams. Where are you going with that one?
Man, this is another situation where I feel like if Saquon is playing, like it might be Dodson, just from a run defense standpoint. But Dorian Williams had some nice sideline to sideline run defense plays in that game against Jacksonville. And I think if you're thinking longer term down the road for this season, like who's the guy with the higher ceiling? Who's the guy you invested the 3rd round draft pick in? It's Dorian Williams. Like there were some moments in the preseason that we highlighted that he had some nice fills in run D, and like there's no replacing Matt Milano. I understand that, but over the course of this season, if Dorian Williams can prove to have a higher ceiling than Tyrell Dodson, I feel like this is not a bad opportunity to give him a shot in a game tonight again, where there shouldn't be so much pressure on a guy like Dorian Williams to have on his shoulders tonight when the Bills really should be getting a lot of plus effort from the front four, right? So I'd like it to be Dorian Williams, but I don't know.
And I really do feel like you have a 2-week window here with the Giants and the Patriots back to back where you can really get Dorian Williams reps, let him make his mistakes, get acclimated, because I think that long term, like over the course of this season, he's the one who's going to need to be the dude. I think Tyrell Dodson can be serviceable, but I don't think Tyrell Dodson's going to be a playmaker. I think Dorian Williams has a chance to at least be a playmaker. So unless the Buffalo Bills are going to go out and make a trade for a guy like Frankie Louvu, I think you really want to make sure that it's Dorian Williams. And this is a 2-week window where he has an opportunity. So as a fan, I would like to see Dorian Williams. However, I just maybe knowing Sean McDermott and some of his tendencies, I think he's going to go Tyrell Dodson. I think he's going to go with the guy who's got experience in the system, a guy who knows what he's doing, a guy who maybe has a better understanding of the checks and the calls. I think he's going to go with Tyrell Dodson. I hope I'm pleasantly surprised tonight, but I think it will be Tyrell Dodson starting. I just wish it was Dorian Williams. I think the Buffalo Bills should be doing everything in their power to get Dorian Williams prepared to fill that role for Matt Milano as the season progresses. The last bit on defense here, Daquan Jones out. It's probably going to be Jordan Phillips starting, even though Jordan Phillips isn't a true one tech. Then you'll have Tim Settle, and then you'll have Poona Ford, who is entering this football game as well. He's going to be on the active list for the first time in a while. Do you see how in this game it's probably going to be Phillips starting and Poona Ford coming in off the bench, but do you maybe foresee over the course of the season Poona Ford sliding into that Daquan Jones role and Jordan Phillips going back to a role that's probably better for him, a wave defensive tackle off the bench who could play more of that 3 tech?
I think that should be the plan. Now, it wouldn't surprise me at all tonight if Jordan Phillips was a starter, like you said. But I do think, again, this is a game where maybe, Jordan Phillips starts in that role, and maybe Poona Ford gets mixed in, and maybe they alternate. Like, I don't know. The Bills could do some interesting things tonight if they wanted to kind of like give Poona Ford some snaps there and kind of make sure that he was like ramping up to play that role, because this is a guy who's been inactive, right? So I don't think you're immediately going to just thrust him into some kind of full-time starter's role. I know they rotate anyway, but like let him kind of get acclimated, bring him in a rotation as the second man off, and then maybe over the course of the next game, he kind of ramps up. So it's kind of like a similar take to what I had on Spectre in a way, right? But I feel like, and I agree, Roy. I mean, Phillips is a little bit out of position.
That's what sucks about it, right? Like we wanted a one tech to step up for so long. Like Star Lotulelei did not do it, and it just like we just were wasting away. And then this beautiful angelic figure in Daquan Jones comes into our lives, and now he's been ripped away so quickly. So yeah, Phillips. Settle is more of a 3 tech. I don't know why the Buffalo Bills play him at 1 tech either. Poona Ford's the big fatty. He's the 1 tech. So it'll be interesting to see how much they go to the well with Poona Ford there and what his rotation looks like. Jessica Tens, before we get into our superlatives, Jessica Tens comes up with a great comment. She says, Judge, weren't you saying that about Bernard too, in terms of Dodson over Bernard? Yeah, I thought with Bernard's injury, I thought that Tyrell Dodson would have started the year at middle linebacker. I believe I made that comment about 2 weeks before the season started. I was like, this sucks. Tyrell Dodson's probably just going to be given the starting middle linebacker job because they're not going to want to throw Terrell Bernard in there cold, having missed so much of training camp. So maybe a glimmer of hope there. maybe once again, I will be dead wrong and the Buffalo Bills will start Dorian Williams tonight. Let's hope that I am wrong. All right. Before we get to our pregame superlatives, as always, this show is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And Dave, we've had this conversation before. Nothing better if you're at a tailgate, right? Yeah, there's hot dogs. Yeah, there's burgers. There's all of these different things. But man, just maybe like ordering a Picasso's pizza the night before and then just wood fire reheating it over a garbage can or an old car would be the perfect way to enjoy some Picasso's pizza. And I like this from Roy Collins here. He says, Judge needs a mug that says Judge is wrong. Yeah. Dan Fett's over at, whatever that radio TV station is in Rochester that they work for. I don't know Rochester media that much. He's got a mug that says Dan is right. I'm just gonna get one that says Judge is wrong. Like that. That'll be my coffee mug. All right, let's get into it. Our pregame superlatives, and then we can go enjoy the 1 p.m. and the 4 p.m. games before the stress-inducing, hopefully not stress-inducing, but it always is, no matter who they play, stress-inducing play that is the Buffalo Bills. Let's start with our Take Me Higher player of the game. As always, in the comment section, hit us up with your Take Me Higher player of the game. The star player outside of Josh Allen that we believe needs to step up in order for the Buffalo Bills to pick up that dub today. Dave, I will start with you. Who is your Take Me Higher player of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hinted at it a bit with what I was saying about Gabe Davis earlier, and I picked Gabe Davis as my Take Me Higher player for the Jags game, and I'm going to go back to the well again this week and pick Gabe Davis as my Take Me Higher player for tonight's game. Giants likely to do everything they can to slow down Stefon Diggs. He's not going to be slowed down, obviously. He's still going to get his, but as a secondary weapon, wants to be the guy that gets paid as that next guy up, the number 2 wide receiver on this team. Kincaid and Knox banged up a bit. Generally don't think the Bills defensively should have a ton of issues in this game. So offensively, I'd like to see them kind of get back on track here. And to me, that's going to be Gabe Davis tonight with a big game. Maybe not a ton of catches, maybe 4 catches, but I could see him in that sort of 4 catch, 80, 90 yard range in a tutty. So give me Gabe Davis for the Take Me Higher player tonight.
Yeah, I did a lot of cheating this week, and we'll get to mine in a moment. But Paul says Jordan Poyer needs to take us higher, and Ken Dorsey needs to take us higher. Brian G comes in and says James Cook. I'm not gonna lie, I cheated so hard this week, but I feel like it just needs to be said, even if it's just blatantly obvious. I'm going with the entire Buffalo Bills defensive line as my Take Me Higher player of the game. Because this is a game where, like, and again, now we can maybe throw a hot take in here, right? Like, this could be part of the Buffalo Bills should push double-digit sacks in this game. Like,
yeah,
that's a realistic possibility with how bad they are up front and how good we are up front. The Buffalo Bills defense should dominate the line of scrimmage. They should just completely suffocate this New York Giants offense. They should show no signs of life at any point during this football game. They need to deflate an already deflated offense in the New York Giants. So to me, the Buffalo Bills defensive line is the Take Me Higher player of the game. If they can't go out and dominate week in and week out, especially against inferior opponents like this, the Buffalo Bills are going to be in trouble because the back 7 is banged up. Matt Milano's not there anymore, right? Trey White's not there anymore. Jordan Poyer showing a little bit of age, right? So the Buffalo Bills need that front 7 to be absolutely dominant, specifically the big 4 guys up front that rotate in. All right, on to our wild card player of the game. This is a non-star player that we feel needs to step up in order for the Buffalo Bills to be successful and to win this football game. Hit us up in the comment section with your wild card player of the game. And Dave, hit us up with your wild card player of the game.
This dude's been trending up, and Jessica kind of stealing my thunder a bit here, but I'm going with AJ Epinesa, right? He's not a starter, technically, although he plays plenty of snaps. He's really been playing well the last couple of weeks. He's single-handedly almost kept us in that game in London with those turnovers on Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, the huge pick 6 against the Commanders a couple of weeks ago. His length has been creating issues for opposing quarterbacks. He's batting down balls. He's getting in throwing lanes. He's really playing well. And I think that in a game where the Bills defensive line really should have a huge advantage against this Giants offensive line, I like AJ Epinesa as a wild card player to make another big play tonight. A lot's going to be talked about Von Miller. A lot's going to be talked about Gregory Rousseau being back. But AJ just continues to play well, and I expect him to make another maybe marquee splash play in tonight's game. So give me AJ Epinesa as my wild card.
That's a good one. And we had this conversation earlier on in the show. We talked about what will the Buffalo Bills do with all these injuries at tight ends. They're probably both tight ends are going to play in Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, but how effective can they be? We talked about maybe using David Edwards and getting Jumbo. Well, the other way you can go is you can maybe spread the New York Giants out a little bit and go with the old 11 personnel and bring a slot wide receiver onto the field. So I'm going to say my wild card player of the game is going to be one of either Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield, or Khalil Shakir. It's going to be one of those three. And I think one of those three will step up this week and they will have 5+ catches, 50+ yards, and a touchdown. So I'm going to go with whoever is the dominant slot receiver in this football game. A couple of other wild card picks coming in here. Brendan P says Christian Benford. Brian G comes in and says Jamarcus Ingram. Caden K comes in and says Dorian Williams. And Roy Collins comes in and says Elam is my wild card. Woo, hoo, hoo, hoo. 2 picks tonight, says Roy Collins for Kyrie Elam. Boy, that would shut us up, wouldn't it? Probably not, because it's the New York Giants, but hey, can't talk when you have a game like that. All right, next up is our Respect You player of the game. This is a player on the opposing team, the Buffalo Bills. They're not going to win this football game if they don't respect this football player and give the attention to this football player that they deserve. Dave, who is your Respect You player of the game? And then we'll get to the comment section with their Respect You players of the game.
Look, I mean, offensively, the Giants are limited. You could point to a guy like Darren Waller, maybe, as a guy who they haven't really gotten going. You do need to respect him. But to me, it's Kayvon Thibodeau. I think Thibodeau is the guy that really can create the most, toxic, havoc, whatever play you want, whatever you want to describe it as, in the Giants' favor, right? And really a defensive play where the defense creates a turnover. Maybe the Bills are deep in their own territory. Like, those are really huge plays in games and are usually plays that kind of spur big underdogs to win in games where they're really not expected to win. So if I'm the Bills, you got to respect Thibodeau. It's going to be interesting to see how they account for that help over there with Knox's wrist being a potential issue if they do a David Edwards situation. But I don't care. Don't let that guy beat you, even if you have to go super heavy. Just don't let that guy beat you. So to me, it's Thibodeau.
And again, I cheated this week, right? Richard Forbes comes in and says Saquon Barkley. Obviously, on the offense, Saquon Barkley is the one you're going to have to respect. I cheated again this week just because I think because of injuries, this team is so depleted. Brian G comes in and says Dexter Lawrence. I just went with the Giants front seven on defense. Thibodeau, as you mentioned, I've seen Jihad Ward make plays in this league. You have Williams, you have Lawrence in the middle of that defense, and then you have 2 sideline to sideline linebackers in Okereke and McFadden who have made plays in this league. They have the talent up front to give the Buffalo Bills offense some issues. And if the Giants have any hope tonight, it's that these guys, all the combination of the front seven, they have the games of their lives, or they bring their A game at least, right? They got to blitz. They got to blitz effectively. They got to take away the underneath, and they have to shut down the run. If you make the Buffalo Bills one-dimensional, force them to pass, get some pressure on Josh Allen, maybe force a turnover, get short field here or there, the New York Giants will have a chance to win this football game. And if they're going to do any of those things, the front seven of that New York Giants defense, which has some pretty decent name players, they're the ones who are going to have to step up. All right, time to take us back to the future with our game predictions. Hit us up in the comment section. Oh, I skipped one. I skipped hot take. So I take it back. What is your, Dave, hottest take of this football game? And then we will get to the comment section with their hottest take of the football game.
Yeah, the Giants have been held under either 268 yards or less on offense in 4 of their 5 games so far this season. In 2 of their games, they've been held to 171 yards or less of offense. So my hot take for this game is the Bills defense holds the New York Giants to under 200 yards of total offense in this game. And I think they come out with a chip. I think they come out fired up for this primetime game, get that bad taste out of their mouths from London. This Bills defense puts the clamps down, and the Bills hold this Giants team to under 200 yards of total offense.
Defense seems to be a theme of the hot takes. Brendan P comes in and says 4 turnovers for the Bills today. Jessica Tennis and Caden K both come in and say the Giants get shut out in this ball game. My prediction is also defensive related. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to be I don't want to pick a number, but I'll say 6+ sacks. They will have at least 6 sacks in this football game. 3+ turnovers. They will have at least 3 turnovers in this football game. They will allow under 14 points. I think the defensive line is going to make a statement in this football game. So not the hottest of takes because, hot take would be like 15 sacks like he's heard earlier. But I think the defense, they rack it up in the box score this afternoon. Renaissance Man comes in and says Leonard Floyd has 4 sacks in this game, bringing his season total to 9.5. That would be crazy. Brian G comes in and says we get a Deontay Hardy return touchdown.
I like that. I like that.
Jessica Tennis comes in and says Dalton Kincaid gets his first touchdown of the season. All right, nice. Now it is time to go back to the future and make our game predictions. Hit us up in the comment section with your predictions for this football game. And Dave, paint a picture for us. What is this game going to look like, and what is your final score prediction?
I think the Bills offense. I don't know that they're going to come out and score on the first drive, but I think they're going to be a bit more efficient this week after the game last week. I think the defense is going to do enough. I think there's going to be a lot of emotion for Tyrod, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants have a couple decent trick plays early on in this game, right, and kind of try to throw the Bills for a loop. But I do think ultimately the Bills just have way more horses than the Giants in this game. They have Josh Allen. Giants offensive line is super banged up. So assuming the Bills can get game script going in their favor early, force the Giants into a passing type of game, it's going to be really, really beneficial to the Bills in that defense. So I like the Bills to kind of feel it out a bit for the first quarter and a half, but eventually kind of put the clamps on and pull away in this game. So I'm going Bills 31, Giants 10.
All right, we got predictions rolling in. Brian G says 37-17 Bills. Caden K 35-0. Roy Collins 38-10. I'm gonna go Bills 41, Giants 13. I think Allen, Diggs, and Davis each have big days. I think the Buffalo Bills defense, specifically their defensive line, as I mentioned in my wild card prediction, I think that they're going to be the talk of the town on social media by the end of the evening. I think that they'll be one of the talking points in national media this week will be the dominance of the Buffalo Bills defensive line. I think that they're going to put on a show. They're going to control the line of scrimmage. They're going to suffocate this Giants offense and allow the Buffalo Bills to do their thing on offense this week. Hopefully they'll actually do it, and the Buffalo Bills win this game 41-13. Jesse Tennis comes in and says 38-0. Claude Puy says 38-13. Renaissance Man says 38
close to mine.
10. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Dave, before we head out of here, any final thoughts?
Look, the Bills, one way or another, I'd love to see them dominate start to finish this game. I'd love to, see it be smiles and stuff on the sideline midway through the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter with guys, starters out of the game.
Can I say something? Can I say something real quick off of that? I don't even know if I want, this might just sound like old man yells at clouds. I don't even know if I want to see celebrations on the sideline. I just want them to go out there and have a business pounding of this completely awful football team, and then just go about their business and get right back to it, tomorrow. Go out there, do your job, but don't enjoy it too much because you're beating a wounded duck here. I don't know. Maybe that's old man yells at clouds of me.
No, I mean, I think there's some truth to that, but at the end of the day, I want to see a dominant win, right? One way or another. And obviously getting the win is the most important, but you would like to see the Bills dominate this game, as they should, right? You don't want to see them limp through this game, struggle, let the Giants hang around. Like, you just don't want to see that tonight if you're the Bills. Like, just go out there, take care of business, and get this thing done.
Panthers are giving the Dolphins a challenge early, up 7-0. And then I think, as just kind of said, they just got the ball back. And I don't think the Dolphins scored. So up 7-0, got the ball back again. That should be an interesting one. And all the 1 p.m. games look somewhat interesting. The Saints had interception, but then they fumbled the interception, and now the Texans have the ball back. So that's about how the 1 p.m. window is going right now. You can catch us tomorrow, 9 p.m. for our Bills Giants takeaway. Hopefully it is a victory celebration and not a therapy session. Don't forget that right here on the Cover One YouTube channel, you also have the Cover One Buffalo post-game show live with Greg and Aaron after the game has concluded. And you can always catch David Fox's post-game thoughts via text if you're someone who likes to read, by heading over to cover1.football in the hours after the game as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Always appreciate it. There are still hours before the Buffalo Bills kick off. So if you guys could, we'd really appreciate if you smash the like button, leave a comment after this video is done being played. That helps us with the algorithm. Or simply hitting that share button, copying and pasting the link, sending it to a friend, a relative, anyone you think might enjoy watching the Air Raid Hour Cover One Buffalo Bills pregame show before the Buffalo Bills and the New York Giants kick off at 8:15 this evening on NBC. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!